there are still people out there that are like, he said he was going to reveal this Easter egg. Like there was, has everything been found? Is there still something out there? There's still stuff out there that you buried in some of the stuff that.
And Jeff, to be honest, if I have my way, I'll be dead and buried, and there'll still be stuff in there, and I'll be quite happy.
This is it. That's a nice little Easter egg. In fact, it's everything.
8 months ago, I released my first Impossible Easter egg video, sparking an uprising of Easter egg hunting in the zombies community. Since then, there has been a lot of clever people hard at work studying a multitude of complex theories with profound explanations, ranging from moments of genius and moments of delusion. But can you really blame us? Call of Duty Zombies over the years has subverted our expectations time and time again, conditioning us to consider every idea within the realm of possibility. All this discussion that carries on outside of the game is a foundation for what turned this insignificant little side mode into so much more. Understandably, the intensity of the Impossible Easter egg hunt has faded out a little bit, as people have exhausted all the ideas and are losing a bit of motivation. And I know for a long time people have been asking for updates because I haven't covered the topic in months, simply because I felt like there wasn't anything of value I had to add, or at least to make a video on. But today, I'm excited to say that has finally changed. Over the last month, I've been working quietly to make sense of a new breakthrough that we've had, which I initially intended to make a solo video on. That was until we had an even more major development, a whole separate breakthrough. So this video will be constructed in 2 major parts. What we are going to go through today is without a doubt the most groundbreaking pieces of progress we have made on the Impossible Easter egg so far. I think this video is going to reignite the fire for the egg, and people will be searching more thoroughly than ever before. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos, you'll have to at least go watch the first one to have context to what I'm talking about here, so you can really appreciate the progress that we have made. All of those videos will be linked in the description, but I'm sure a lot of you are up to date with this whole Impossible Easter egg saga, and to you I say sit tight, watch this video in full, because all these segments are going to be intertwined. Luckily, these findings are not too convoluted in nature, so they are relatively easy to understand. I hope it's quite evident that a lot of work goes into these videos. 99% of the people that watch them aren't subscribed, so if you do appreciate this video, subscribe, leave a like, I'd be very grateful.
Okay, let's recap a bit, shall we?
Before we go deep on our new findings, we need to establish some important reference points going forward. You're going to have to bear with me because this will all tie together in the end. Our first point of reference lies within the words of the man himself, Jason Blundell.
Basically. I don't know. I think there's people out there who... there's such passion in the community. I don't watch it close enough, but I am sure there are people who are still working on some of those ciphers.
Oh, of course there is, yeah.
And I love that, because there's other things that will appear.
Okay.
But yeah,
I need to reiterate that I think this is the single most important piece of information that we ever received from Blundell. But we're going to circle back to this later. Over the duration of this hunt, there have been a lot of clever theories and great videos made about what the Impossible Easter egg is. During all this time, my focus has always revolved around the KN44 Hypercube blueprint, a torn paper Easter egg that was found on the Black Ops 3 Zombies map, The Giant. Some people's faith wavered in my theory after questions were raised if the KN44 was actually significant or not. To keep it short, let me reassure you, it definitely is. Other critical yet separate points of focus in the Impossible Easter egg hunt have been all the unsolved ciphers in Black Ops 3 Zombies and the infamous John Dee and his books in Derisadra. Glitching Queen initially ignited this John Dee theory with a great video exploring the world of this historical mathematician from the 15th century and how there are 24 named books that he wrote that can be found scattered across Derisadra. Dee's work is also referenced in the Black Ops 3 Zombie leveling system as the title for certain ranks. We also entertain the idea that the titles of these books could somehow string string together a cipher, as Dee was involved with his fair share of cryptography in his time. The gaming revolution then added to this, making another brilliant theory video about how he believes historical figures like John Dee and his assistant Edward Kelly are actually Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man, and that in itself is the impossible Easter egg, a theory that is based upon one of the pages from the infamous BO3 developer docs. Now initially I wasn't sure if John Dee's books in Horizon were going to be a cipher, as in the developer docs all the ciphers are clearly listed in their own segment, where these books are actually listed on the long list of props a part of the assets. Obviously that doesn't fully rule out all suspicion, but I wasn't sure if this was significant or it was simply just another one of the many historical references that Zombie often makes within its story. Although TGR's video brings up some interesting parallels, I wasn't convinced that John Dee was in fact Dr. Monty and that the impossible Easter egg was solved, for a few reasons. It doesn't align with any of the clues that Blundell gave us over the years during interviews, and to refer to the document that this theory is based on, it seemed to me that this was simply one of the many concept ideas provided by developers during the early production of Black Ops 3 Zombies, before any of the timeline and stuff was established. Because throughout the events of Black Ops 3 Zombies' story, it's pretty clear that this proposed narrative concept was not followed through with, as it wouldn't make any sense in relation to the Chronorium timeline, or just in general the events of the whole Ether story. We also know that there were many inspirations that are explored within the developer docs. For example, this page detailing the creation of the Shadow Man shows that it was influenced by a character called the G-Man from the game Half-Life. Now, a solid theory that has been circulating out there for a while now is that the aesthetic inspiration for our KN44 Hypercube blueprint is derived from the 1981 movie Time Bandits. Within the film there is a blueprint map that holds the secrets of the universe that looks very similar to our one. What's really fascinating is that within the developer docs it's revealed that Time Bandits did not just influence our blueprint, but Dr. Monty himself. The Supreme Being is a godlike character within the film that holds striking resemblance to Dr. Monty. And the secret map from the film that we theorized about previously was actually created by the Supreme Being, which again is similar to how our KN44 blueprint was created by Monty, which we see him signing in the alternate loading screens of the Zombie comic. It's clear from the developer docs that the majority of the inspiration for Dr. Monty was derived from the movie Time Bandits. He even has a similar aesthetic appearance. But then when you compare these two blueprints, they do have some similarities, like both holding the ultimate secrets within their respective universes. Yet our Zombies blueprint is quite different. It has some pretty bizarre unrelated additions, like the Hypercube and the KN44. So we have the KN44 Hypercube blueprint, John Dee in his books, and all these unsolved ciphers in Black Ops 3 Zombies. The question is, does this all somehow tie together? At this point I was just in awe of the fact that I have now been researching advanced mathematics, complex cryptography, and occultist figures from the 1500s, all because of an Easter egg in Call of Duty Zombies. Back down the rabbit hole I went. Huge thank you to Gaz and Lightning. They put a lot of work into some of the research in these next segments. Their channels will be linked down below. After all this time I did start asking myself, what the hell is up with this John Dee fella? Is there some other connection here that we're missing? As we have established before, everything that Blundell did was done with intent. I knew he wouldn't introduce specific elements of a historical figure like John Dee for no reason. I just had no idea what yet. Even though that some people's faith had depleted in it, this whole time I still believe that the KN44 blueprint was without a doubt the most important piece to this impossible Easter egg. But it is undeniable the progress on this puzzle had hit a major stalemate over time. A bunch of interesting discoveries that had been made outside of it, but I was struggling to find any way to link our findings together without being unrealistic. My ultimate goal was trying to connect the blueprint and John Dee together, so I started to dig deeper. First, I looked into John Dee. What do we really know about him? He was an English mathematician, astronomer, occultist, and an alchemist, born in 1527. Now, the initial face value connections I made with John Dee was that he had done extensive work around alchemy and developed and utilized ciphers to secretly communicate and preserve his alchemy studies. Now both cryptography and alchemy obviously make some memorable appearances within COD Zombies. Alchemy mainly within Blundell's Chaos story in Black Ops 4 and even now in Black Ops 6. I also thought that Dee, being a respected astronomer, could potentially have significance regarding the solar system constellation sketches on the KN-44 Hypercube blueprint. But even with my continued research, I failed to discover anything about John Dee that I thought was really groundbreaking. I felt like I had exhausted all my efforts trying to find any noteworthy connection between our two main focuses in this impossible Easter egg hunt. This was all until I took a second look at the history of the Hypercube, more specifically, its origin. In 1978, the Hypercube invention was credited to a mathematics professor named Thomas Bankoff and a computer scientist named Charles Strauss, who teamed up to create an animated visualization of a three-dimensional cube rotating in four-dimensional space, which is now what we know as a hypercube or a tesseract, a concept us impossible Easter egg hunters are all too familiar with by now. But it is also very important to note that in 1888, Charles Hinton, an older British mathematician, wrote a book called A New Era of Thought, where he describes a 4D cube, naming it the Tesseract. He was credited for widening our understanding of comprehending 4D geometry. Now clearly this is all discovered hundreds of years after John Dee's time, so there's no way that he has any link to the foundings of the Hypercube. Or does he? I then stumbled across this, and this is where shit gets a bit crazy. In 1564, John Dee wrote a book titled The Hieroglyphic Monad that details his studies on hieroglyphics and specifically the Monars Hieroglyphica, a symbol that to him represented spiritual evolution, which was made up of a combination of several astrological and alchemical symbols. Dee intended the Monars to serve as a tool for contemplation and understanding, a kind of esoteric key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. To display these ideas, Dee also established advanced geometric theorem that was unheard of at the time. And to my absolute shock, in doing so, John Dee conceptualizes the very first design of a 4D cube, a cube within a cube. Over 300 years before it was even given a name, hypercube or tesseract. John Dee literally described the concept of 4D geometry long before the world could comprehend or visualize what it really was. It wasn't until centuries later where historians have now gone back and theorized that within Dee's hieroglyphic monad book, he may have just developed the earliest impression of a hypercube in history. In the description, I will link a couple of videos that I watched of the experts doing an extensive breakdown, divulging Dee's work with the conceptualization of the hypercube. To add to this even further, in modern history, old scriptures of John Dee's work have been transcribed and translated in the early 2000s, showing how Dee revisited his hypercube concept when exhibiting what was known as his Black Venus ritual, a dark religious-like ritual performance that Dee conjured up, which is visualized as a collection of astrology symbols on the squares of an unfolded hypercube in the shape of a cross in a religious fashion. We believe that there are some similarities drawn from this with our KN-44 hypercube blueprint, as the apothegm symbols on the summoning key are displayed in a similar way. I also pointed out in a previous video that how the summoning circles in Shadows of Evil seem to resemble a flat hypercube net. The Zombies community since then has also theorized that the summoning circles actually resemble John Dee's portrayal of the seal of God. Now with this uncovering that Dee has a link to the hypercube, it's now possible that both of these theories are true. In the modern research of John Dee, experts have also theorized that his seal of God drawing may actually be derived from an unfolded tesseract net, aka the hypercube, which makes a lot of sense and why all three of these hold such strong resemblance. As I said, studying all of this, months of trying to find answers for mysteries in Black Ops 3 Zombies, and of course attempting to solve the impossible Easter egg, I've had to be mindful that it's easy to get carried away and wander beyond the realms of reality. But here we have John Dee and the hypercube, unanswered questions that I wasn't even sure they had anything to do with each other. The fact that these two seemingly isolated things now actually have a deeply rooted connection genuinely shocked me. So I started to ask the question, How do we take that connection and turn it into something useful? Is there something key that we can take from Dee's Black Venus ritual? Is there a way we can translate his astrology symbols from his Hypercube format and make it relate to our Apothicon language on our Hypercube? Or do the constellations themselves on the blueprint have further significance than we think? Is there more to it than meets the eye? If you thought that segment of the video was wild, prepare yourself for this next part. Throughout this whole hunt for the impossible Easter egg, the majority of our investigating has actually taken place outside of the game. Whether it was researching the history of people or places, or trying to crack the ciphers that have remained unsolved for so long. It was widely accepted from the hints Blundell gave us in his interviews that there wouldn't be anything we could find within the game's code, which didn't rule out finding anything important in the game, but anything that could be extracted from the files would have been likely found by now. Nevertheless, throughout the last few months we have been searching through the maps to try and find any patterns that would help us crack the unsolved Revelation ciphers. And to now circle back to this clip that I mentioned earlier, where I emphasized how important this statement really is.
Just like, the ciphers are so hard that there's nothing else. So it's like, is there...
Well, you've not done all the ciphers yet.
Exactly, no one has.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, when you were going for those ciphers, did you not intend, but I guess expect that people were going to just sort of hit like a stalemate and just be like, well, I've got them, basically?
I don't know. I think there's people out there who... there's such passion in the community. I don't watch it close enough, but I am sure there are people who are still working on some of those ciphers.
Oh, of course there is, yeah.
And I love that, because there's other things that will appear.
Okay.
But yeah,
There is more to this than we initially thought. Over the years, Blundell established an identity of a very cryptic nature. In doing so, it has led people to intensely analyse everything he said and every movement he made. Although I think this thorough examining can be productive in some cases, for example like the Morse code blinking in this interview.
Okay, it's time. It's lightning round time.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Yes.
So I think the plan here is that he's not going to look at me for the whole thing.
Absolutely.
He's going to...
Or hints he gave us when teasing unfound ciphers.
So my question is, what is your favourite unsolved zombie cipher? Which game map is it from? Thanks in advance. Okay, so I would say a couple of my favourites are actually in Voyage of Despair. There's actually quite a few. Now, the only thing I would say, because you said you don't want any hints, sure, you know, I don't want to cause a rumble.
I would consider these clips examples where Blundell is intentionally trying to tell us something. And that is what's crucial here, his intent. Because we have been so obsessive over all of Blundell's comment, I believe sometimes we begin to overanalyze the things he says that he had no intent behind. For example, this recent clip where Blundell did this amazing interview on Jeff Gertzman's show.
Yeah, and you know, for a while there, you were the face of zombies. And you know, and it's funny, like going and looking, there are still people out there that are like, he said he was going to reveal this Easter egg. Like there was, has everything been found? Is there still something out there? There's still stuff out there that you buried in some of the stuff.
And Jeff, to be honest, if I have my way, I'll be dead and buried, and there'll still be stuff in there, and I'll be quite happy. Yeah, it was such a fun time because.
The full interview will be linked in the description. A lot of the people in the community when seeing this clip thought there's an unsolved Easter egg on buried simply because Blundell used the word buried. I think this is an example of overanalyzing. Another example is this clip.
the thing, just to crush everyone's dreams.
Okay, the official statement.
You can ask me all you want. I'm going to put that away in a vault and talk to you again about it in 8 years' time.
Okay, and by then we'll be old and growing beards.
Yeah, exactly.
When hunting the impossible Easter egg, a lot of people took this in a vault comment in a very literal way, where I genuinely believe this is just Blundell naturally describing in a metaphorical way. So what is the point I'm trying to make here? Because I'm not trying to diminish certain people's theories. What I'm saying is distinguishing between what Blundell said with intent and without has saved me from wasting a lot of time. This interview with Dalek where Blundell states that he loves the fact that people are still working on the unsolved ciphers, because once they are solved, more things will appear.
I am sure there are people who are still working on some of those ciphers.
Oh, of course there is, yeah.
And I love that, because there's other things that will appear.
Okay.
But yeah,
This statement is probably the most straightforward and transparent hint we have ever heard out of Jason Blundell's mouth that he fully intended. At face value, most of us heard this comment and thought, well, that's a given. Of course any cipher will reveal narrative teasers for the future. But why say more things will appear with that cheeky grin? Jason Blundell, a man so cryptic, to say something in such a straightforward fashion absolutely screams suspicion. Now fast forward 8 years later, these ciphers still haven't been solved. If they were meant to be story and lore pieces to tease the future maps and games, Blundell wouldn't have made them so difficult. Convinced that these ciphers held more significance than story is what kept me looking for more. Revisiting all the maps over and over, this time we were inspecting some suspicious leads on Horizon Drake. More specifically, the leads that we were chasing are these past book papers in the projector room. We believe that they could be crucial to cracking one of the unsolved Revelation ciphers, as these papers also have a twin set that do appear in Revelations itself. However, while sweeping the projector room for any relevant material, we stumbled across something far more exciting. We wanted to get a closer look at the actual images that the projector slideshow plays in the projector room, to see if there's anything disguised among the images and text. We also inspected the surveillance monitors in the command room, which record security footage of various areas within Horizon Drake's Griffin Castle. All of these monitors in the command room show panning camera angles of each specific area. The rocket testing site, the first dragon area, the biodome on the moon, Dempsey's rocket taking off. There is even one that is broken and static, but there is one particular monitor in the corner of the room that is unique. This specific computer screen rotates through and surveils 4 different areas. It shows the first dragon area again, the power room, the upper courtyard, and then the projector room, the place we'd just been exploring. And upon closer inspection, Lightning spotted something. What we have found here is without a doubt the most exciting moment throughout this whole impossible Easter egg hunt. In the few brief seconds that the camera shows the projector room, in this footage on the right side of the screen, you can see some faint drawings on the wall. These drawings aren't any old scribbles. These are the constellation schematics from the KN-44 blueprint. Absolutely blew my mind. The first thing I thought to myself was I definitely have no recollection of ever seeing that in the projector room. So we went to check, and sure enough, they simply are not there. Where they are supposed to be is on this wall where this long equation is written. For the few seconds that this shot passes by, fragments of the Hypercube blueprint have been intentionally concealed within this low-resolution security footage. This has been hidden in Horizon Drake, one of the most iconic maps in history, for 9 years. Forget how long we've been thoroughly looking for the impossible Easter egg in the last year. This has been in the game since 2016 and no one has ever noticed it. Now I can understand a lot of you are probably skeptical seeing this, but I promise you, go into your game and get a look for yourself. It's truly astonishing. Looking at this frame closely, there actually appears to be 2 of the constellation rings present. The more distinguishable one on the right hand wall, and there's also one on the floor. Neither appear in the actual projector room within the map. The constellation on the right shares the most similarities with the top right constellation on the KN-44 blueprint. It's not exactly identical, as it seems like one of the orbiting planets is situated in a slightly different location compared to the one on the blueprint, but it's difficult to accurately compare as this video is so low resolution. The small variation between these 2 drawings may prove significant going forward. The constellation on the ground is really too blurry to even make out, or compare it to see if it holds any resemblance to the other constellations on the blueprint. It's crazy how after all this time the KN-44 blueprint only made appearances in the Giant and Torn Pieces, and then Monty signs it in the zombie comics. And now we have a new part to this puzzle. I have to say, even though I'm shocked that this has remained unfound for so long, it really does make sense. It's hidden in the perfect way where it can't be data mined, because it's merged into another image of something completely unrelated. Not only is this not scripted, but you can't even search for it in the files because it's masked behind something completely unsuspecting, camouflaged in the dark background of a fuzzy computer screen that swipes by for a few seconds. So now there are multiple avenues to go down. Firstly, and evidently, there is a chance that there are other hidden fragments of the Blueprint constellation hidden within other DLC maps in Black Ops 3 Zombies, maybe even in other computer screen. If they are as hidden as this one, I wouldn't be surprised, but it's crazy to even think that that is now a possibility. Another route of thinking is that the appearance of these constellations could have significance to John Dee. As I said earlier, one of the initial connections I made before this was found was that Dee was heavily involved with astronomy, and that his primary emergence takes place within these books in Der Eisendrache, some of which are even located in the projector room, which happens to be the same place that this Blueprint constellation should appear. Also, the fact that the KN-44 wall buy is in this room as well. If John Dee's books do contain some kind of encryption, it may all be linked, especially with Dee's newfound connection to the Hypercube. There are beginning to be a lot of parallels occurring that are too good for coincidence. One of these John Dee books in Der Eisendrache, titled The Evil Archon, also appears multiple times in Revelations, even in the Undercroft section of the map, which potentially could also hold meaning in the bigger picture, along with the passbook papers in Der Eisendrache's projector room that we were investigating, which led us to the discovery of the hidden Blueprint constellation. These passbook papers also appear a second time in Revelations, which we believe have a link to one of the unsolved ciphers in Revelations. But we will save that for another video when we have covered more ground. One final thing to note that I did mention in a previous video is that within the developer docs, all 24 of John Dee's books are featured in the asset list as props. But there is an additional book, Artifacts of Legend, listed that does not appear in any map, indicating that it was cut content. There is a two-sided debate with this. Some people think that because the book was meant to be in the game and was cut, it means it's unlikely the lettering of Dee's books hold any encryption and they're simply references to his work. The other side of the coin is the notion that this Artifacts of Legends book being cut could reveal a method to solve any potential encryption backwards, figuring out the reason why the book was cut and why the book's removal had to be done in order to make the encrypted message work. Whether it was the amount of characters in the title, total books involved, capitalization of letters, or even the letters chosen. What parameters did this specific book not meet to be a part of this puzzle? To be completely honest, I'm not really sure where I stand on this debate as of right now. All I know is after all this time, finding this fragment of the blueprint in Der Eisendrache is the most exciting progress I've made on the impossible Easter eggs since my first video. All my focus is going to be on finding any more of these hidden fragments across the other maps in Black Ops 3 Zombies, or finding any more links between John Dee and these constellations, or his involvement with the Hypercube. If you want to be involved with the impossible Easter egg hunt, join my Discord in the description of this video. We are closing in on this now, and in 6 weeks time it will mark the day that Blundell stated he thinks it will take 8 years to solve. Let's make that timeline happen.